My name is Kate Fossen, if you don't know, founder at Brand Pollinators, and we help emerging purpose-driven brands to scale. Our favorite thing is being able to connect people to each other and to resources that they need to grow their brand intentionally. And one of our features that we offer is this monthly community call where we bring in a guest expert. And today, our expert is Nick Todd from Spins. Welcome.
Thanks, Kate. So nice to meet everyone. My name's Nick. I am an account executive at Spins. So just to give you a little bit of background into my CPG insight. So I started in the CPG space June of 2021. I started with ClearCut Analytics, which is a data provider via Amazon. So the idea is it was a market measurement tool similar to Spins that was tracking trends in mostly body care, VMS, hydration, etc. And those trends tend to happen on Amazon 12 to 18 months before brick and mortar. So the data was very predictive and also very important for brands to just have a pulse on ingredients, different packing sizes, etc. before they hit market. So actually my first month at ClearCut, Spins merged with ClearCut. And eventually over time, I started selling more retail point of sale data, which led me to becoming the Spin seller. So if you're not familiar with Spins, we essentially, each time there's a scan at a grocery store for any CPG product that Spins has in their retail ecosystem, we track that scan. And through that, we get 4 pieces of information. We get the UPC, we get the brand associated with it, we get the category it's in, and then lastly where the scan came from. And then from there, we're able to spit in hundreds and hundreds of different attributes and pricing measures into how we gauge that brand and how we that brand measures in whether it be a channel level view, retailer view, etc. So I've been now working in my current role for about 8 months now. I actually am focused in center of store brands. So think like anything that's a pantry item or anything that's frozen along with produce. So that leads me here today. But I actually do have a lot of experience working with body care and hydration. So I think we have a good group here that we could, hopefully my expertise helps.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, and thanks for giving us a little bit of background. I'm sure most of you have heard of Spins, but yeah, it's really cool. So when Spins captures that data, you can get the information about whether the product is like certified B Corp or organic, or you able to get all those insights just from the scans?
Yeah, so we have a team of data analysts at Spins so it is partially manual work. So what they'll do is each time a new UPC scans into our system, they'll essentially have access to what the UPC is, what the brand is, and how it's initially coded in terms of category. From there, they'll look at the label and they'll look at the ingredients to code if it's certified B Corp, or for example, if gluten's yes or no, or if ashwagandha is in the product, etc. And through that information, brands, brokers, etc., whoever has access to our portal, they can access if gluten is a trending or gluten-free is a trending attribute in, let's say, bread, or they can track if ashwagandha is a trending ingredient in like drink packets or energy drinks, etc. So there's a lot of different ways we layer on different not only product attributes but also pricing specific attributes that may be driving the category up, maybe driving promotional lift for that brand, etc. by retailer.
So what are some of the most used data points, or what's some of the data that brands are looking for the most?
So I think from an emerging brand perspective, if a brand is pre-launched, they're generally a little bit more inclined to learn about innovation. And also they just want to know, they want to remove the guesswork from what's working in the market. So they want to understand I want to see if, for example, if ashwagandha, if there's maybe a certain ingredient in ashwagandha that's trending, or for like bread, if like gluten-free if gluten-free like sliced bread, if that's trending in a certain retailer, et cetera. So for a lot of emerging brands, it's removing the guesswork. I would say generally once brands have a few stores they're robust in, a lot of it's for internal reporting purposes as well. They don't want to be blindsided by competitors that could be taking shelf space. They want to make sure that they're not being like mismatched in terms of innovation in the category, and also just having a general pulse on your brand. Like for example, I met with a brand yesterday who they had no idea discontinuation at Whole Foods was coming, and they had no pulse on their current distribution. It's a $3 million brand, and Whole Foods just emailed them overnight. It was like, hey, like we're removing 7 of your 9 SKUs effective tomorrow. So a lot of it is, I hate to say it, but fear-based, just making sure that you're removing the guesswork. And if there's maybe a merger in the category that could be taking your spot.
Man. And you mentioned innovation too. I mean, I think that it seems like that'd be a good opportunity to find sort of like some gaps, and then emerging brands are a little bit more nimble and able to kind of fill in if the data is showing that there's kind of something missing there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a lot of the fun I have with working with pre-launch and like very new emerging brands is just the amount of flexibility the business has. And also like a lot of the time it's a passion project, like whether it be, you were making a sauce over the pandemic and boom, just something everyone really liked became a business, or just something like I know like some entrepreneurs just are working on a passion project with their friends after college and it becomes a big success. So that's a lot of the fun I have working with emerging brands. That being said, there is big CPG and other brands that are also interesting in terms of just trying to find different voids in their innovation.
Mm-hmm. There's a few more people that have joined us. So I just want to remind you that if you have any questions throughout, feel free to chime in or drop something in the chat. If you wanted to find out about something specific, just let us know and we'll make sure we cover it. Just one of the things that I was thinking of when you were talking about the brand that started during the pandemic is how can brands use that data to tell their story? So I think that that's like an important piece of if you have access to this data, then you can show kind of how that category is growing or something like that. I mean, what are some of the best ways that they can use data to help kind of get that message out?
So I think that's a great question. Something that I think I've noticed, at least with natural products, is a lot of the stories they have is like, my daughter, for example, may have been allergic to a certain ingredient in bread or dressing, etc. Or, I was found out I was gluten insensitive, so I wanted to, I love bread and I wanted to find an alternative that made sense. So I think spins, I've used it before, but like it removes the guesswork of if that attribute is trending. So, through the spins data, you would be able to see if a certain attribute is growing or declining in a category or in a channel. You could look at the retailer level. So, if you subscribe to a certain retailer, you could see in Kroger if a certain flavor in energy drinks is trending versus others. You could see if a certain flavor in candy, like natural candy bars, is trending in Foxtrot versus Fresh Time, etc. So there's just limitless ways to use not only the data, but the way the data is stacked and the way it affects retailer by retailer, channel by channel, geography by geography. It's just very fascinating to see how brands use this and apply it to their sales story.
Yeah, that's really cool. So like you mentioned some of the retailers. So what, like with Spins particular, what retailers can you get information from?
So the way we divide our data is through 3 main channels. Natural channel, which we consider natural channel retailers to have 40% or more of their products to be organic or natural. Conventional retailers are big box stores, think Walmart, Kroger, Target, etc. The way our conventional retailers work is we actually have a partnership with another company called IRI. IRI holds the relationship with the conventional retailers. The difference is the way we spit out the data has hundreds and hundreds of more attributes, and it's a partnership. So we work together. They just hold the relationship. Lastly, we have a regional channel, which is retailers that are proprietary to Spins. They're exclusive to us. but 40%, they don't have 40% or more of their products to be natural or organic. So those are the three ways we really, like, I guess, clump our data together from a channel view. In terms of what retailers we have access to, I like to phrase it as which retailers we don't have access to, just to provide transparency. Really the big ones I can think of off the top of my head are Whole Foods, HEB, Costco, and then Trader Joe's and Aldi are mostly private labels, so they don't really share with anyone. Otherwise, like pretty much any conventional or natural retailer you think of, we have access to key account level data for.
That's really cool, because I think it's pretty hard to get that information just kind of as like a founder, selling a couple SKUs into the store. I mean,
Yeah.
I have had this experience, but like trying to find out even just movement on your own product, it seems like is not always easy. So, oh, sorry, my dog's barking. So yeah, it sounds like Spins is really helpful in that aspect, to kind of not only gather information about other brands, but you can probably get information about your own brand as well.
Yeah, and that's really where the conversation starts a lot of the time. So when I'm hunting for business, a lot of time I'll just send a email or send a LinkedIn message to a VP of sales or CEO and say, hey, just thought it'd be useful to, give you an overview of your business's retail performance of the past 52 weeks. And often I'll hear back and say, like, I had no idea this was going on. Like, whether it be like they weren't getting distributor reports, KT wasn't reporting correctly, maybe the retailer they were at, they had some supply chain issues at. A lot of the time, this is unknown, particularly for brands that are emerging or newer. So yeah, a lot from a reporting standpoint, that's really what the first hook is. And like from there, it's just the power of the attributes, the power of the velocity and distribution measures that's so critical to a brand as they're looking to scale.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I thought we had a question here. Oh yeah, Danny says, isn't Whole Foods data free and public?
So competitive data, I know you have to buy separately from a different provider. As for their like distribution store level, I believe what they do, and correct me if I'm wrong, so we don't have a relationship with Whole Foods. What I understand is they provide just like a distribution analysis of your product by store. That's my understanding, but I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, but Whole Foods, yeah, you don't work with them, so you can get information directly from Whole Foods, but it's probably not going to be as.
It's just your own distribution, from what I understand. No competitive.
That makes sense. So, I mean, obviously, there's going to be an expense to working with a company like Spins. So, I mean, if it's an emerging brand, an early stage brand, like when do you think is a good time to invest in that type of information and that type of detail? Or is there like, I don't know, is there a way to really maximize the ROI? Like, is there a certain time when you should do it?
There's definitely a certain time. And especially talking to a brand a lot of the time who are just starting, they just don't have the capital or investment to afford even a bare bones package where they're just getting very minimal competitive or their own distribution data. It's like a weird song and dance a lot of the time where a brand just wants to have an investor or two first, and then one or two retailers that they're in and have robust distribution at. So generally, I think it just mostly depends on investment. If you're starting new and you're scraping by and you're doing deliveries on your own, it's just the nature of the beast is like, it's just not affordable at that point. At the same time, though, if you're a 500K brand and you're seeing some increases, but starting to see some distribution voids, or you're starting to get nervous about innovation that's happening in your category, I think that's a great opportunity to invest in the data. But it really just depends on your immediate business needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if you had any, like, if you have any way to show us what the dashboard looks like or anything like that, or if not, maybe you could talk about some like interesting insights that you've seen people kind of get through data that they had access to.
Yeah, so it might be a little complicated to pull like a full demo for this, but one example I have that I think everyone here would like is I actually just sold to a brand recently who they had no pulse. They were mostly either at retailers that were everyday lower price, or they were just getting into new natural stores but had to go on promo to start. What I showed that brand was a way we were able to track promo lift through a certain dashboard we have. And they were just stunned. They were like, I didn't know we were like, what the portal, what the dashboard shows you is how many base unit customers you're gaining through XYZ promo after the promo. And they were just amazed at the power of us being able to track how many more incremental units they got through the promo and what the aftermath was by retailer. So that's just like a recent example of a brand that was just like, they literally told me on the spot, like, can we buy this yesterday? So that's just the power of like, wow, we're able to track our distribution in such an accurate and such a predictive way that's going to tell our story to other retailers and to investors what's to come for our product. Like that just blew them out of the water.
Yeah, that's so cool. Does anybody like want to chime in with some question about what kind of data that they would be looking for specifically, or any questions about the type of data you'd be able to get from spins that would help your brand?
I do have a burning question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nick, so I heard about your way of digitizing the UPC code. So my understanding is this is something for the retailers that you're trying to put in your brands with, like on shelves, and not for the consumer? Or is it something for both, where the consumer wants to hear your story, they tap the UPC, the goal of that UPC is to tell your story, or the goal of the consumer is to get a discount coupon code, or they keep tapping the UPCs and whatever the way you want to digitize those UPC codes for a brand, like in terms of a brand? Is that what you guys do, or is it more for the retailer? And also another question I would like you to answer is there anything you do to protect the brand identity or theft? Because I sell a lot on Amazon, and now it's like we've been contacted by a lot of resellers, and I do not want to authorize any resellers to sell our brands because it's so hard to track. And again, the UPC codes have to be monitored and, you know, smartly digitized and all of those challenges. So can you elaborate a little more on if there's brand theft measures that you guys are taking with spins? I have no idea.
Yeah, so I can answer the second one very easily. Yes, actually through our Amazon services, and I can send you a follow-up just to give you an idea of what that looks like. We there's two parts of our Amazon business. One is a market measurement where it's similar to spins, competitive and distribution data. You know, you're measuring how a category is performing, how specific items performing, et cetera. But we also have a separate part of our Amazon business called channel management. And through that, part of it is map enforcement. So what we're able to do is we have a team that's able to track third-party sellers, illicit sellers, et cetera, and essentially remove that as a cause of concern for your business. So that is actually part of the offering that Spins has. And that was when I was with ClearCut, that was really one of the main services we sold, and we still sell through Spins today. As for your first question regarding digitizing the UPC, so Spins isn't necessarily like a consumer at the grocery store facing product. It's really for the use of either brands, private equity, brokers, distributors, ingredient suppliers, et cetera. I would say of brands that buy retail market level data, if I had to guess, 60 to 70% of them would be brands. And really the main purposes for buying that data would be understanding trends in their category, tracking their own distribution, and having a pulse on their market and their share in their space. So there's not really like if I was in a completely different industry, there would be no reason for me to buy anything from Spins. So that would kind of be my best way to answer that.
Thank you for answering.
Yeah, definitely.
We had another question too. What would you suggest for brands that are pretty new to using data and not quite sure how to use it? So if they're, somebody's just they've just gotten into a retailer and they really want to know, what's the data that I can use and how should I be using it? What would you suggest?
Yeah, so good question, Craig. First, we have consulting services at Spins. So we have a team of experts who they'll provide market market analysis of like what's happening. They'll provide opportunity gaps, distribution void coverage, just essentially be like a consultant who has access to the same data you have, and they'll put together deliverables based on the data you have access to, so you can best sell your sell story, provide investors with a robust deck of why your brand is worth an investment. Those are generally the two use cases for a consultant. As for like a more simple hack of data for a starting up brand, so like, for example, if you're a pre-launch brand, generally channel level data is going to be the most effective way to just have a forecast into what's to come in the market. The best example I have is I met with a brand yesterday who's out of New Zealand, and they have no idea what's happening in America in terms of trends. They're just flying completely blind in what's to come in America. So them having access to channel level data gives them an idea of what ingredients they need in their products in order to succeed in the American market. It gives them an idea of what pack sizes and pricing measures they should be looking at when they're approaching retailers and buyers, et cetera. So it does depend on the circumstance, but generally some level of channel view and some consultancy really goes a long way into providing that immediate value to a brand starting up.
Yeah, and I wasn't even thinking about like the pack size too. I mean, obviously you can compare, pricing and ingredients, but yeah, like even the size packaging. I mean, what are some other like super granular details you can get?
So I think a lot of the fun ones are in beverage is actually a good example. So like you could, like in energy drinks or sodas, you could track like very specific like aspartame or very specific ingredients that natural retailers don't want in their stores. And you could track how those are declining or increasing. Like if, aspartame is in a certain item ranking report, you see how that's trending versus products that don't have aspartame. That's one that I think is super granular. So like just being able to like plunk through the data and see like what certain ingredients or what certain certifications are trending is like something I could have never imagined before joining Spins. Like, that's just so cool how we could track different trends in the space through that.
Yeah, so it would be basically you could do a comparison of like products with aspartame and without, and then kind of look at what the trends are over time for sales.
Yeah, so not only for sales, but also like which ones are moving off shelf quicker, which ones are increasing. If for example, like last year we saw a lot of supply chain issues. I had a brand tell me yesterday that the price they paid for the specific kind of rice they buy for their product, it doubled during last year. So like, let's see how other brands in this space are affected by average retail price because of these supply chain issues, et cetera. So it's very fascinating to see how pricing metrics play hand in hand with the product specific attributes or ingredient specific attributes we're able to track through the data as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. Nick has a question about velocity too. He said velocity benchmarks are super important, but can be hard to come by. Is that something Spins could provide for multiple categories on a scrappy budget?
It's hard to answer that question in yes or no. It depends what you mean by scrappy budget, but through our portal, like what I try best to do if a brand gives me an idea of what their budget is and I know what the top need for the data is, I definitely try my best to make the immediate value add as concise as possible, especially if there is an immediate deliverable. So like if you're going to Expo West and you want to showcase how your velocity is versus the competition in one category, like we can funnel through different ways to kind of cut out what you don't need through the data today, I guess would be my best way to answer without saying no. The answer is never absolute no.
Yeah. No, I mean, it sounds like there's just so much that you can do with it. I mean, so if somebody ends up using Spins, are they going to have like free reign to like whatever data they need, or is there like certain dashboard that they would get and they can kind of like just have access to a certain piece, or how does that work?
Yeah, so how we sell our packages is based on categories generally. So let's say you're a condiments brand and you only, you only buy or you only sell hot sauce today. but maybe down the road you want to innovate and make a couple of barbecue sauce products, or you want to make a couple of soy sauce products. What you could do is just subscribe to hot sauce as a subcategory because it's under condiments to start. And then later on, as your brand's looking to innovate in barbecue sauce or soy sauce or whatever, you could add on to your package. So just because you're buying a small package today doesn't mean you can add or decrease based on your business needs.
Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, I'm just trying to think about the best way. So I guess if people wanted to see like a demo or something, then maybe they could just contact you or me, and I can put them in touch with somebody from their category that might be able to help.
Yeah, and actually, something we do at Spins is we segment our business based on different categories. So, like I noticed Craig is on this call. He's on the Spins sales team, and he sells to only snacking and beverage companies. I sell to only center of store brands, so pantry items mostly. So we do segment our business in a way that allows the salespeople and also the customer success teams to be a lot more versed in different ingredient trends, different attribute trends, pricing trends, et cetera, so that we're kind of just masters in the way we're able to know the information versus one day I'm selling to a natural Ganda brand and the next day I'm selling to a cheese brand. Like there's just not a lot of cohesion through that. So that's the reason why Spins layers our sales team that way.
Yeah. So, is there a question? No. Okay. So what are some trends that you're seeing in your category right now?
So in my space, there's a big movement for especially grain specific products. There's a big movement not only for gluten-free, but low calorie. I think especially in the natural stores, a lot of customers just they love pasta, but they don't love all the nutrition that comes with it. And I feel like that movement really started in the past couple of years. So that's one big one. I think in condiments, there's a big movement for natural ingredients as well. I think, you think back 10, 15 years ago when Heinz, Tabasco, all the big condiment companies were kind of just owning 60+% of the market. Now there's a lot more scrappy ways for local brands to be looked at as a much better product at a cheap price for the owners. So we're seeing a ton of innovation there. Otherwise, I think those are the
regenerative. I feel like we hear a lot about regenerative. Is that something that consumers are like buying specifically?
It depends on the category. I think I know Spins like buckets the ways that our shoppers think. And I think in the most innovative type of shopper is thinking of regenerative today. So maybe that like 5 to 10% shopper who's very cautious of what's in their food, or maybe is just very dietary restricted is thinking about that. I do think that's a trend that 5 years ago was maybe 2%. So I don't think it's commonplace yet, but I think it's getting there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like I've heard a lot about that, and it seems like Expo has a lot of coverage of that as well. And the other thing that I saw a lot of coverage on for Expo for the talks this year is about sustainable packaging too. I mean, do you have any insights on sustainable packaging?
I'm personally not too much of an expert in sustainable packaging just because the way my category works. I haven't heard it a lot in my talk tracks. I do know that for bigger companies, it's definitely more top of mind just because if you're Vital Proteins, for example, you're the number 1 in collagen, that could be make or break for a handful of, a decent percentage of your customers. So I do think that's more of I think what I noticed that emerging brands just tend to have a lot more on their plate, just in terms of just having to worry about margins and trying to get into stores versus packaging off the gate. So that would be more of an enterprise concern that I'm seeing more and more of.
Okay, interesting. Anybody else have any questions regarding the data you can get from Spins? I just want to make sure we're covering stuff that is relevant for you. So we've got powdered beverage, we've got health and beauty, coffee.
I think powdered beverage is a category that's grown just from a consumer perspective, grown a ton. Like I feel like 10 years ago, you were seeing people with Kool-Aid packets, but what else? Like Kool-Aid and Gatorade, and that's it. And now everyone's using liquid IV. everyone's using collagen, everyone's using protein powder. Like this is just commonplace versus 10 years ago. It was just like, oh, you have protein powder? Like, tell me more.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Danny says top 5 trends overall.
Oh, that may take a minute.
We're gonna hold you to this. We're gonna come back next
I
year.
know 2 off the gate that are actually outside of my category are ashwagandha and melatonin. Those 2 both just absolutely exploded with the pandemic. Those are trends we saw on Amazon first. I know myself, I started using melatonin regularly during the pandemic because I just wasn't using enough energy sitting at home all day. And I think a lot of customers resonated with that. And ashwagandha has just been shown to be a very natural way for helping remove stress. Let's see. Other trends.
What's funny, this morning I saw somebody had posted on LinkedIn about Post cereal had this like I don't know if it had melatonin, but it was like supposed to be a sleep aid, but like the cereal was supposed to promote better sleep. But it was just funny because it's like a cereal, which you would think of eating in the morning. And I'm like, are they trying to sell a nighttime cereal? Because like that just seems crazy.
That is interesting. It kind of makes sense though, because I think like they're trying to appeal to the midnight snack crowd. And you know, when you're having a midnight snack, you're thinking, man, I just want to fall right back asleep. Granted, it's not great for you to eat right before you fall asleep, but if it helps them gain market share, which I'm sure they've done consumer studies on,
Right.
don't necessarily blame them.
Yeah, maybe they saw the melatonin trend.
Yeah, and I mean it's weird. Like melatonin's in drinks now. They're combining it with CBD. It's people didn't know what melatonin was 5 years ago, and now it's its own borderline its own category.
Craig thinks. I think this is his guess, the regenerative sourcing and manufacturing.
That's one that, again, like definitely with protein and like produce, I could see a lot more of. I think with commonplace items, gluten-free is just huge. Like there's so many gluten insensitive customers. I would guess it makes up 10 to 15% of the customer base. It's a lot.
I'm curious about with gluten-free. So if it makes a difference to have a gluten-free label on a product that is kind of traditionally a gluten-free product in general, you know what I mean? Like Kool-Aid, gluten-free. Like, well, obviously.
I think it's kind of a waste of label space if it's like a beverage. But if you're selling like, I don't know, a ready to eat burrito, like that's extremely valuable because that's, especially if you're selling a natural store, I would guess the amount of gluten-free customers or gluten insensitive customers you have is a lot higher than your traditional Kroger or Walmart, etc.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point too, is like the data that comes out of the natural channels versus the conventional is going to be different because it's probably a different consumer set.
One, we actually had the CEO of Vital Proteins speak at our all company meeting a couple months ago, and a trend she noticed that was actually really affecting Vital Proteins was certified B Corp. Especially with the natural channel retailers, they were finding that some customers just couldn't get over them not being certified B Corp, so they had to earn that certification. I heard it's actually kind of a tough process, but that's one that I know a lot of customers are more aware of today.
Yeah, I think B Corp is a great one because it's like there's so many things that encompass that certification, and so it's kind of a heuristic for consumers when they see the B symbol, that they kind of associate that brand with all the things that they've had to do to get there. Okay, we have a couple other questions. How important is it to have all the certifications on the labels? Are there certain ones that sell better than others?
That's the power of the data. You're able to find out which certifications are the most appealing in your category by retailer. I would say there are some that are a lot more important. Again, like I mentioned, like label gluten-free is not going to matter for a beverage brand, but it's going to be exponentially more important for, I don't know, like a canned soup. So it does depend. I do think, especially as an emerging brand, you want to be unique, but also you want to be straightforward with what certification you have, because you, at the end of the day, you only have so much label space. And when you think about, you as the customer at the grocery store, you're making a decision like so quickly. Like if I'm at, if I go to Jewel later today and I'm looking for a soup, like I'm not going to make a decision based off of 5 different label claims. It's going to be 1 or 2. So that's how I would look at it, is from the consumer's eyes.
Yeah, that's a tough one, John Alex, because you really, you don't want to crowd up your label, but you have to figure out what's going to be most important to your customers and kind of what's going to tell your story the best. And that's why I think B Corp is helpful in that aspect. And it's good to see that that's something that other brands have found to be a valuable attribute to have on their label. Okay, we have a question about co-packers. Any advice you can provide on co-packers?
I probably would not be the best person to ask. However, if you send me that question after, I could put you in touch with someone who's better. I'm just generally working with the brand side. I'm not as privy with which co-packers to sign with, etc.
Yeah, that's definitely more of a behind the scenes thing that you wouldn't be able to find out that data, like who's using what co-packers or anything like that.
Yeah, that's not really because we're not tracking like who's using what co-packers through the scans, and that's not really like resellable data that we provide.
Yeah, and consumers wouldn't know that information anyway, or wouldn't make decisions based on that. So another question: what's a reasonable price premium for a natural or organic product versus a conventional product?
What category?
Oh, I think this is from Nick, so he's not in a category. Nick.
What I missed that. Sorry.
I'm category neutral, so I'm just in general. What's a reasonable price premium from what you've seen?
For like a product or for spin services?
For a product. So I'm looking at a price premium. So if this is arbitrary, but let's say you make I don't know, a popsicle, and one is clean and one is conventional. What's a reasonable price premium?
I have to think about that. I can't answer that off the top of my head.
That's okay, no problem.
Like, percentage, like maybe a percentage wise. It probably depends on the category and
I mean, some categories are just gonna be so slim margined versus others are high margin, but their velocity is a lot lower. So my initial answer would be it's very much based on if your product's shelf stable or not, and based on just the velocity of your product. But otherwise, it's hard to answer without really narrowing in those factors.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Do you know off the top of your head, like I know you work in produce. Do you see the difference there between the conventional and organic, like the price difference, what people are kind of willing to pay?
I think in conventional, there's a lot more everyday lower pricing, and also just sales in general, or promos in general. They're also at natural retailers, they tend to carry one conventionally focused produce brand per, I guess, subcategory. So like they'll carry like one non-organic blueberry, and then they'll carry an organic blueberry or 2 organic blueberry brands. So that would kind of be the best way I would answer that is at natural, they definitely tend to take more risk in like the produce category, for example, versus conventional. You go to your local Jewel, they just have Driscoll's, or they just have your standard enterprise level brands. They don't really take risk with smaller produce brands unless it's more of a locally focused conventional store.
Yeah, I was just curious, knowing that you're that produce. I'm surprised produce falls under like center of store category.
It's just the way we clumped it together. We had to make it in a way so every team had an equal representation of the grocery store.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, any other questions for Nick? I'm gonna wrap it up here, but if any questions come up afterwards, feel free to. I know because it's category based, I can maybe make those connections for you. So if you want to reach out to me and just let me know if you have any specific questions, And then I can kind of point you to the right person, whether it's Nick or someone else on the spins team that would best fit with your particular category. Oh, Nick's got his email here.
Yeah, I just threw my email in there. So if you have any specific questions, you know, I know there's a question about co-packer. I can resurface that to the right team at Spins, or you know, if you have a specific question about a segment, I can resurface that to the specific segment. Well, I can't talk today. At Spins.
No worries. No. And then I put my email in here as well. If you don't have it, also our website, brandpollinators.com, where you can go and you can sign up for our email newsletter. If you're not on there, we send out information about these upcoming calls. We did a breakdown before this call about some data that you can use and how to use it. So if you want to stay in touch with Brand Pollinators and kind of learn more that can help your brand, definitely sign up for the newsletter there. Reach out to me if you have any questions. Pallavi has her expo booth 3023. If anybody else have an expo booth, put it on there. I'm going to be at expo, and I will try to make a rundown of all the Brand Pollinators brands in our community. Oh, yes, Tuyo is also there. And when
I unfortunately will not be there, but I'll be sure to pass your booths along. Yeah, I wish I was going to be there, but I will not be there.
Nick, it's going to be so fun.
I know I want to be there, but we brought our whole sales team last year, and we had to not bring our whole sales team this year.
Yeah, fair enough.
So when you're a 500-person company, it's hard to justify. So next year I'll be making a lot more of a case for myself.
Nice. I'll be there. Well, I'm actually going to be helping out Stephanie in the Tuyo booth. So if anybody wants to stop by and see me there on Friday, I'll be there, or Thursday, I'll be there. But yeah, looking forward to seeing everybody who's going to be at Expo, and maybe I'll send out an email with a rundown of all our booths where people are going to be, so we can kind of track each other down. Oh, and Ryan's reminding us there is a Spins booth.
There's two Spins booths, actually.
Two Spins booths.
So one's in I can follow up with which booths they are, unless Ryan has them on hand, but one's in the hot product section and one's in whatever the regular area is.
And there's prizes. He says spin the wheel and win a prize.
Oh yeah.
Spin for spins.
You'll have to find out there what the prizes are.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Nick. It was great to hear from you and learn more about spins.
Thanks, everyone. And feel free to reach out with any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.